You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and then awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Welcome, everyone, to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and I've got a wonderful, very special interview in store for you today. My guest today is Richard Rieman, and I will read a little bit about Richard. This is a conversation that I think is going to stimulate, challenge, and activate your imagination. That's what we're going for today on Decide to Transform. So Richard, as a child, wanted to be Superman. He couldn't fly, so he decided to be Clark Kent instead and had a long and successful career as a radio news reporter and anchor. Richard then became the audiobook wizard, narrating and producing hundreds of audiobooks and authoring the award-winning book, The Author's Guide to Audiobook Creation. To fill a gap in the audiobook world, Richard founded Imagination Videobooks, a nonprofit that creates audiobooks for blind and low-vision children, which include audio description of the wonderful illustrations. Now, this is going to be a lot of fun. Richard, welcome.
Thank you, Tomas. Great to be here.
It's really wonderful to have you. And there are so many questions that come up for me. And I know that the listeners are going to be interested in imagination video books and audiobook creation and the children's component. But let's start from the start here. As a child,
Okay.
You wanted to be Superman, but you couldn't fly. Yeah, would you walk us through a little bit about that?
I was a huge comic book fan, and also discovered how to read through comic books, and that the library existed. I was amazed. My sister took me to the library for the first time when I was, I think, 5. And we walked in, this huge library. At least it seemed so at the time. 3 levels of books everywhere. And my sister said, Kathy said, and you can take 5 out for free. And I was like amazed.
All right.
So I discovered the library and reading and wanted to be a writer. So in 2nd grade, I became a professional writer. I wrote stories about my classmates on notebook paper, 2 sides, and I charged them a nickel to read them. And because their names were in them, they were they were eager to find out what it was about, and that's how I got my comic book money. So yes, that's how everything began.
I love this. The image that brings to mind is from Peanuts, psychiatric help 5 cents with Lucy
Yeah,
as the
exactly.
psychiatrist. Yeah. Yeah, for those of you under 30, look that up, Peanuts. So,
Right.
right. Yeah. And so you charged them 5 cents to read, and you were in 2nd grade.
Yes,
Okay.
I was a professional author at age 7 or 8. I forget which one, but I was always interested and fascinated in finding out more about the world than the one that existed around me, which is a lesson for people now because the world is so small
Yeah.
right now
Yeah.
that looking beyond that is so important to know that there is a huge universe out there of things to learn about, things to know. And so I really was so curious that I had to become a reporter because that way you find out about so many things, an incredible number of things. Of course, your knowledge is an inch deep and a mile wide because you're only touching on subjects a little bit here and there.
Yes.
But that's why I decided to go into journalism.
Okay. Well, and how did you start out in your journalistic career? Where were you?
Well, the first thing I did was get kicked off my high school newspaper.
Mm.
I was uh, I was very critical of the editor
Okay.
because she wanted me to write stories about the prom decorations and the sports teams and things in high school, and I wanted to write about the anti-war riots that were
Oh,
going on
okay.
and the kids who had brothers in Vietnam. And so we had differences of opinion,
Hmm.
and so I got kicked off the newspaper, and I went over to the speech team because they had a speaking category, radio news.
Okay.
So I ended up doing radio news broadcasts,
Hmm.
and then in college, Southern Illinois University, there were anti-war riots going on at that time, and I called WLS Radio, which was in Chicago, my
Hmm.
radio station that had a good news department at that time, and I said, "I'm inside the ROTC building. They're trying to burn it down. Would you like anything on this?" And they said, "Good, we're rolling,"
All right.
and and basically I described what was going on. And then when I left college, they remembered me as the kid from SIU. I got hired at WLS Radio in Chicago right out of college
Okay.
to be a news writer and anchor.
All right. Now, was this still when you were hired and went to Chicago? You were hired by WLS. Was this still during the Vietnam War era?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 1971. So,
Okay.
yeah, it was kind of right in the middle of when things were happening. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been tear gassed many times
Oh,
at riots,
wow.
the both in college and also later in life as in I was living in Chicago and there would be demonstrations and now and then, and so I'm certainly used to the feeling of tear gas.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, and for the listeners who have not experienced that, well, it's very unpleasant.
Yes,
Yeah. I
yes.
mean,
Besides the coughing and just burning eyes. So I launched my career in radio news and was lucky enough to start working for the RKO radio network in New York as an anchor, and then went down to Washington, D.C., and became the Washington bureau chief for
oh,
RKO.
okay.
So I was covering the Reagan administration. Shows you
Mm.
how old I am.
Mhm.
But I helped produce the Saturday morning radio addresses in the Oval Office. I was able to travel around the world on the press plane with President Reagan to just see, the amazing things that are out there.
Wow.
So I had the privilege of, being on Capitol Hill, being at the White House, all the things that have come up in, the news recently. I was there, so it
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. You were there. And so did you travel on the press plane with President Reagan for both of his terms?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
One typical trip was Washington, D.C. to L.A. to Honolulu to Bali, Indonesia
Mm.
to Tokyo, Japan to Seoul, South Korea, and then flying back, refueling in Alaska, and then coming back to D.C. And that was just one trip, 44 hours in the air.
Mm. Okay. Well, yes, I remember those circuits. I remember that all of this pre-pandemic, there were a lot of flights that went into
Yes.
this. So, yeah, and you literally had the opportunity to see the entire world
Yes,
during that
yes.
time.
I went to Europe, Asia. It was South America. I mean, it was such a privilege. And the media was a little bit different then. We weren't considered the enemy,
No.
it was a great experience. It was
Oh,
something I always treasure.
that's really wonderful. I'm learning a great deal. I didn't know that about you. And what is is there a one place of all of the places that you visited? Are there one or two that really stand out for you in your mind as memorable or left an impression somehow?
Well, the first one I would say is Bali, Indonesia,
Bali.
which
Okay.
is just a beautiful island. And I, for the first time, really saw the contrast driving from the airport to the palatial, offices and buildings and hotels and everything. But on the way, seeing the destitute poverty, seeing mud huts that people were living in, and the contrast between those lives and the lives of people who had money. And I do understand that, you know, uh, the fact that rich people and tourists go to Bali means jobs and money for the economy for the
Yeah,
others.
sure.
But still, to see that contrast, it was life changing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And now, did you go back to Bali more than once? And
No, that was just one time. I've been to so many places once, but not twice.
sure.
The other place that pops to mind is Ireland. I've been there a few times, and I just love it. I'm part leprechaun myself, so the I was able to trace my ancestry back to the 1700s.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun. Ireland, just a wonderful, friendly place.
That's wonderful. And well, I've never been, but that is what I hear, and full of life,
Hmm.
most definitely. Yeah, I look at the pictures and I want to go. So you had this opportunity under the Reagan administration to travel on the press plane. And what happened then, since we're going chronologically here, when Ronald Reagan left office?
Yeah.
Then where were you?
Well, that's when the first President Bush was sworn in, and I
Hmm.
was at the inauguration, and basically everything was going great, except the FCC decided at that time, in the late 1990s, to stop requiring radio stations to carry news and public affairs.
Right, I remember.
And within a year, about 80% of the radio news jobs in America were just gone. Stations stopped carrying news, perhaps a network newscast, but certainly not local news.
Hmm.
And, all music all the time became the thing. And it wiped out, most of the jobs in my industry. So I had to find something else to do at that time. And that's how I got into audiobooks.
Okay. And so approximately, this is during the first Bush administration, then you got into
Yes.
audiobooks. So for those of you that may not be familiar with the timeline here, that's 1989 to 90, first part of 93, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Well,
what we're looking at, which means, Richard, that you've been doing audiobooks literally for decades.
yes.
This is very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you start out in the audiobook industry?
Well, I went to an audiobook coach, Sean Pratt, who happens to be, he's got over 1,000 books that he's narrated. And he said, wow, you've got a great radio voice. We've got to change that, though, because narrating has nothing to do with radio newscasting.
Okay.
So basically, he turned me back into an actor. I'd done some acting in high school and college, and because he said if you're going to do more than nonfiction, you have to do characters, character
Hmm.
voices. So he helped me with learning about how to do different voices, how to go for different genres of audiobooks. If you have to be a wizard in an audiobook, how do you find how to do a wizard voice? So I, of course, went to Harry Potter and Ollivander's wand shop, and it was like, okay, Harry, so good to see you, Harry. I gave your parents their wands. So I was able to develop all these different voices. I was a cowboy in a ghost story, and it was like, hey, Nell, you're looking really good, especially since you've been dead for 10 years. And, everything from playing a little boy in a haunted furniture store. You know, did that chair just talk to me? Voices from the young age to the old geezers, who talk like
Right.
this. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
grandpa, pappy. So plus accents. I mean,
Right.
some books had me do, well, the most I ever did was 35 different voices in an audiobook.
Wow.
And it was mostly on a submarine, a nuclear submarine on a secret mission to China. And I was saying, the description in the book said said gruffly, lots of gruff
Okay.
voices. And it's like, how many? I can't do 35 gruff voices. So, so the Irish guy had an Irish accent, and he was Irish American all of a sudden. And
Hmm.
then, and then the Russian guy, whose name sounded like Russian, he
Yeah.
talked like this. And the German guy was up here, talking more like a German accent.
Mhm.
So basically, I was able to take all these characters and separate them, especially when they were talking to each other. That's quite the challenge in the
Oh, okay.
audiobook world.
Yeah, really interesting. And I'm glad that you shared some of the character voices. Of course, I was going to ask you to do that. Now, how many character voices are you able to master approximately? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, basically, you're not doing an imitation. You are doing uh, just a sense, a touch. Especially, a lot of people ask, how do you do female voices when you're the only narrator in a
Uh,
book? And you have to avoid the stereotypes, the "Hi, honey, how are you?" type of voice, and just be subtle about it. It really doesn't need to be a huge difference to speak a woman's part, as so basically, I listen to recordings. If the character reminds me of an actor, I will listen to that and come up with my approximation of that kind of voice.
mhm.
Because it's amazing how many voices there are out there.
Oh, yeah.
But when people are listening to audiobooks, the secret is keeping them in the book, in the words, talking to them, having a conversation with them, telling one person the story. So you become a storyteller. And that is the most important thing to remember, that you're not on stage, shouting out your lines, that you are simply taking the words written by an author and turning them into characters you can delineate, that sound different enough
Right.
so they can follow them. I mean, I know Jim Dale, who Jim did the Harry Potter series,
Mhm.
and well over 200 different voices in the Harry Potter series. But it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
I love this. Okay. So I'm very intrigued by what you just said. You become a storyteller. So what can you tell us about that role? There's a lot of depth to that, I can tell for you.
Yeah, it's writing my own stories and eventually writing a book. Um, I mean, I understand the perspective of the people who put their thoughts into words, and I try to honor the way they would present those words in audio. I mean, storytelling is the oldest form of communication. I mean, certainly the cavemen probably told stories.
Yeah.
And around the campfire is a generational idea that has been passed on again and again. And it's just, you know, taking some unique words and turning them into a story. And I decided that once I'd done all the audiobooks and was getting to, be a little bit older, what could I do to leave a legacy? And that's brought me to children's books.
Okay. Yes. So, yeah, would you tell us a little bit more, if you don't mind, about that? It brought you to children's books, and there was a lot of thought that went into that about
Yeah.
wanting to leave a legacy. So, why children's books for you?
Well, number one, they were part of my life growing up, going back to the
Yeah.
library days, certainly,
Yes.
and a big influence on me. And then I read stories to my three children, of course, and, could see the excitement and the combination of learning how to be an audiobook narrator, learning how to be a storyteller. Once upon a time, there was a fairy who had but one tooth, and this is the story of how she became the Tooth Fairy.
Mm.
So, using that voice and others, I got into narrating children's books.
Okay.
But I noticed there was a gap, Tomas. That children's illustrated books don't make good audiobooks because they're missing the images. So they, so I was thinking, okay, how can we make these wonderful children's illustrated books into audiobooks that make a difference?
Right.
And so I, started creating these audiobooks with description of the images.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And as for listeners, this is something that I know that they're wondering about because, yeah, as adults, we listen to audiobooks, we listen to podcasts, radio shows all of the time. But what about children's books that are so visual dependent? So
Hmm.
you begin with the narration, and then what does it look like to describe the images then? How does that combine?
Well, it was important for me to do it professionally,
Hmm.
that I wasn't just going to take an idea that I had and start doing it. So there is a whole world of what's called audio description. These are the people who create the audio description for the blind and low vision people who, on TV, in movies, on TV shows, in theaters, where they basically do an audio track where they come in between the dialogue and describe the scenes so that those who are blind have access to what's going on. And that was the whole concept of audio description. And to actually take that and apply it to children's books means that I have professional audio description writers. Um, they write the descriptions of the pictures that they see. And they love it because it gives them freedom that doesn't exist in the TV and movie world,
Sure.
because you're not trying to jam in your what you're saying between dialogue. You have more time to be
Hmm.
more descriptive.
Yeah.
So and each audiobook becomes a co-narration between someone who narrates the book and the person who narrates the audio description. So it's a co-narrated audiobook.
Okay. And how many years has this been in existence here? It's in that.
Well, we just launched it last year.
Okay.
Imagination Video Books, and I
Hmm.
call it video books because In addition to the audio, I also add to some of them images from the books so that when parents are showing these books to their children, they can see what is going on, and also, gives a good example of how accurate the description really is. So
Okay.
I end up doing video, and we're doing a YouTube children's channel
Mm.
to make these available for free. And it is also working with the ADA, and the people at the Council for the Blind, who the Audio Description Association, and they have a project that lists all of the TV shows and movies that have audio description, and they've agreed to add my books to the
Okay. Oh,
descriptions so
wonderful.
that the blind community can have access to them and find them. Because otherwise, there's so much out there that they'd never really be able to track them down. And my goal is to do 200 of these audiobooks this year. So in effect, I'm a small publisher.
Okay. All right. I love this. All right. Yeah, and you just started. So this is
Yeah.
something that's very, very interesting, just because people have this is when we were talking before, you mentioned that this was basically unserved and uncharted territory. Now, is it still
Yes.
the case or
Yeah, it really is.
okay.
I'm pushing Audible to carry audiobooks with
Okay.
description. I am, really trying to be active in the blind community to let them know that this exists. And my connection to the blind community is not that someone in my family was blind. I was a guide for blind skiers, a ski guide,
Oh, okay. Wow. Hmm.
and got into the community that way, and was actually a racing instructor for blind skiers, believe it or not.
All
That's
right.
pretty rare. I took some of the blind skiers around the gates, down the slope, skiing right behind them,
Interesting.
left,
Okay.
right. And so that's how I ended up with many blind and low vision friends. And I say low vision because there are not that many people who are totally blind
Okay. Right.
compared to those who have vision issues,
Mhm.
and even dyslexic who have trouble reading.
Sure.
This is something that works for them. So that's really how I decided that, the blind community could be served in this way.
Okay. Well, they most certainly can. And the image of you giving ski instruction, I'm conjuring up a slalom course in my
Yeah.
mind, a left, right, left, right, left, right, whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah,
Right.
giant slalom.
A
Not
giant
the not
slalom.
not
Okay.
where the gates are close together.
Okay.
Basically, yeah. But it really helped my skiing because you don't want
I can imagine.
your guide to fall down behind you.
No?
So, so so I learned how to ski very well by
Marvelous.
being the pressure of having to ski right behind one of the blind skiers. And I was proud because one of the blind skiers that I instructed ended up going to Winter Park in Colorado for the national
Oh,
competition.
yeah.
Yeah, she was an excellent skier, and that's how I got into combining, something that serves the blind community with the audiobook community, because blind and low vision children, they will love audiobooks when they get to the age where it makes sense to them.
Sure.
And before that time, there are 350,000 children in America under the age of 8 that are blind or low vision.
Okay.
And I am giving them access to something they don't have unless their parents read to them and describe the pictures. This way, they will know what sighted people are seeing because we're describing the images along with the story.
Okay. I love this. 350,000, and that equates to a number of grateful parents. So, have you received a lot of positive feedback from those parents?
I've received a lot of positive feedback from both parents and the narrators. I, I, I have over 50 professional narrators who have volunteered their services to
Okay.
help me with this project. And five of them are blind or low vision
Mhm,
themselves,
mhm, mhm.
and they are, narrating these books. And I had a conversation a short time ago with one of the female narrators who burst into tears. And she
Okay.
said, I would have loved to have something like this when I was growing up.
Yes.
And that's how I know I'm on the right path.
Okay. I love it. Yeah. This is wonderful. Now, are you still a ski instructor?
No, I've
Oh.
I've slowed down a bit. I used to ski to staying alive, staying alive. Now I
Uh,
ski to sing in the rain,
mm.
just sing. So I'm I'm at the age, I'm almost 70.
Okay.
So I get discounts, which is great.
Love
But
it.
I'm in the Over the Hill Ski Club at the
Mm.
moment,
All right.
and when I turn 70, I qualify for the One Ski Pole in the Grave ski group.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so they have a skeleton climbing out of a grave with ski poles.
Hmm.
Uh, so, so yeah,
Well, at least if the skeleton's going to go, if you're listening and you're a
yes,
skier, that Richard's joining us from Colorado. So there must be a
yes.
lot of ski clubs.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
there are, and so I'm still out there on the slopes.
All right. I love that. Okay. Well, then, how would people get a hold of you to find out more information about your work or about Imagination Video Books?
Well, imaginationvideobooks.org is the website. It is a 501c3 nonprofit. That's where you find out information about the project and also see samples of what we are doing and have the opportunity to donate to support us because it costs roughly $400 to $500 per audiobook production.
Okay.
So we are, raising funds to create more of these books. And part of, if someone donates $50 or more, they are mentioned as a sponsor of a particular audiobook,
Okay.
brought to you by this person,
Oh,
through
wonderful.
the donation of. So it becomes, their name is prominent in the audiobook as well as in the description of the audiobook. So that's how, we're able to give back a little.
Okay. Well, this is wonderful. And then the website again, imaginationvideobooks.org. And
That's right.
all right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Richard at imaginationvideobooks.org is my email. If someone wants to find out more information about what we're doing, I'm happy to do that. Talk to potential narrators for these children's books
Mm,
because
sure.
there's just some wonderful kids' books out there.
Yeah.
And I am, talking to some publishers to see if I can get access to their entire libraries
Oh,
to start
wonderful.
doing these the classic books,
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
the where the wild things are and things like
Yes.
that, to get the rights to do this audio with audio description version.
Okay, I love that. Let the wild rumpus start. Everybody remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Love it. Well, and how many, a couple of quick questions here. How many
Sure.
books have you all done with Imagination Video Books at this point?
We're just starting out. We have about 25 we've done and another 20 in production.
Okay.
And like I said, the goal is 200 by the end of 2021. And we can do that. I mean, that is, I know it's for a week to produce, but with the people I'm working with, we can really generate these really quickly.
Mhm.
And that's really what I want to do is build a presence on Audible, a presence on
No, I
YouTube,
love it.
a presence so that people will know that these exist, and really encourage others to get into audio description because it is such a wonderful industry that is way behind the closed captioning for the deaf industry. The blind community is totally underserved as far as the number of movies
Right.
and TV shows that have the audio description track built in.
Hmm.
That's changing,
No,
but we
good.
are right on the cusp of making this part of the consciousness that this exists, audio description exists.
That's beautiful. Uh, yeah, it's beautiful. And to serve such a large and underserved market has to be a lot of fun for you.
Yes, absolutely. And, working for kids, and I still narrate some of these books myself
Hmm.
or do the audio description for them. And also my daughter,
Oh, okay.
Erin, who is 23,
Uh,
she is a professional narrator now too,
oh, beautiful. All
works
right.
for some of the big publishers, and she's a voice on it. So it's a family project.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of fun. And you're always looking for additional narrators and voices, correct?
Yes, yes. And when I say professional, I mean, people who have at least a setup in their home that's a professional, podcasters, that type
Right.
of thing.
Hmm.
It's professional setup that have, hopefully some experience. But I have seen some speakers that I immediately went, oh, she'd be great narrating a
Hmm.
book,
Right.
and approach them. So those are the resources. I find the audio description writers, you know, and I have editors, audio editors who put everything together.
Okay.
So, it's not a complicated project, but it is something that has a lot of moving parts.
Hmm. Sure.
And
Sure.
what my plan is to leave this, I use the word legacy, as an inspiration, a continuing nonprofit to create these and be the resource for children's books with audio description.
Okay. The go-to. I love this. All
Yeah.
right. Well, and for those of you listening here, you just heard Richard say that you don't have to have a lot of experience if you have the equipment and the desire to contribute in this way. Please reach out to Richard at imaginationvideobooks.org.
Right.
And also, it's the website imaginationvideobooks.org. And if you'd like to make a donation in any amount to sponsor an audiobook for children, this is a wonderful project. And Richard, I've learned a great deal about it and audiobooks and about you. And before we wrap up here, anything else that you would like to add for the listeners today?
It's really important, especially now with the pandemic and everything that has happened, for parents to read to their children.
Ah, yeah.
That is a way of getting them interested in books, of creating a feeling of, wow, reading is great. Books are wonderful. So the more parents who can read to their children, the better off we all are in the future.
Mhm. Right. Yes. And if you have kids and you're listening, read to them. And if you don't have kids, read to yourself as well,
Yes.
because it is fun. It is fun.
And nieces and nephews and grandchildren. Yes.
Absolutely. Read to anyone. I love this. Yes. Wonderful. Well, Richard, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here today. I really appreciate your sharing not only your radio voice, and you do have a radio voice, but also the voices of characters. I think this has been really wonderful. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Tomas. Appreciate it.
And this has been Richard Rieman here on Decide to Transform. And read to your children. And if you don't have children, read to anyone and yourself. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are.